Hey,
Hey,
there we
whoa,
go. We're
yeah.
doing it.
Mhm.
We're killing it. Is your
I was gonna
microphone
say,
on?
yes, okay, I am on.
You're doing it
I'm,
because we're
I'm.
talking over each other.
Well, if you shut up for like 2 seconds, maybe I could test my microphone.
I refuse. Hey, it's Tuesday, and that means we are here to talk about comic books and what's
Mm-hmm.
coming out this week. And I see a pretty decent sized stack there, but there's a
Yes.
lot of thick books.
There's a lot of some trades to show off. There's not as
Mhm.
many new issues as the last couple of weeks. I
Okay.
know the last couple of shows, it's been like huge weeks for
Yeah,
comics,
yeah, like
and
just a giant stack of
yeah,
just
like
regular
2
issues.
weeks ago, my poll had like 15 issues in it, which is more than
Wow.
some people get in like a month or a couple of months.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was a lot. There's not as many this week, but there's still a lot of key important releases tomorrow that I'm extremely excited about. Like one of these books I've been waiting for multiple years is finally coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
So
Well, let's get started then.
yes,
Let's talk about
let's
these
jump
bad
into
boys.
it.
Let's see what we got.
So
here.
the
Let's
first
see what we
one,
got here.
we have to obligatory show off Batman Wayne Family Adventures.
Mhm,
This is the book that our very own Susie Blake works on. This
Yeah.
is a printing of the webtoon series that's just like a bunch of short stories about the Bat family. But Susie is an artist, and she does a lot of the background art
The
for these
artiste.
panels.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the background stuff. So that's really cool. Like it's always neat meeting working artists because it's very very difficult to make a living as a working artist, and Susie's doing it.
Killing it.
Yeah. So we just want to. We're excited. This is volume 2 coming out tomorrow. I actually don't know how many volumes there are. I know there will be several. Not seven. Several.
There will be 7 of them.
There will be
I don't
seven.
know how many, but there will be 7.
There will be 7. That's But anyway, come into the store. I'm sure Susie will be happy to talk to you about Wayne Family Adventures and give you all the dirty little secrets that she has from working on the comic. All the industry gossip.
Yep, and weird things hidden in the background.
Yes, all the weird stuff she puts in the
background.
A
lot of Easter eggs, if you will.
I will. All right, another book that I'm super excited about. Night of the Living Cat.
The Living Cat.
Pretty sure we talked about volume 2 when it came out.
I feel like we talked about this.
So this is. Do you remember what this book is?
Nope.
Okay. This is a manga. It's a Japanese comic, but it's a zombie comic. Like it's told. It's a comedy book, but it's told as a straightforward horror. Where if a cat bites you, you get turned into a cat.
Oh, cool.
And so it's just like, it's just played like a straight zombie story, except instead of zombies, it's just realistic looking cats. And it's pretty funny. There's just a lot of comedy to it.
Excellent.
I love this book. I highly recommend it if you like comedy, horror comedy, and cats. I feel like I can say this as a cat person.
Okay.
I have a lot of cats in my house. People that really like cats are weird. And so, I don't think that's like a secret or anything.
No, it's not really.
So I hype this book up a lot, and I tell people like, yeah, it's like zombies, but if a cat bites you, and more than one person has been like, oh my god, that's my dream. I wish it would just come true.
Turn into a cat.
And I'm like, well, it's like kind of a horror story, like but it's also funny. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are just like, I wish I was a cat. I don't, because my cats would be so mean. They would just like beat me up all the time.
They would beat you up.
Yeah, they're not nice cats.
They're not personal.
They're also stupid though, so I don't know.
They don't know. Are they watching right now? I hope they're
not
watching.
I hope not.
Sorry, he doesn't need it.
They shouldn't have access to my computer at home.
They have the internet open right now.
Yeah, I know. Those little rascals. All right, moving on. There's a couple other trade paperback releases this week that are books that I read when they were coming out. Highly recommend this. Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead, talking about zombies. This book, first of all, this book is awesome because it's drawn by Eduardo Risso. He's done a lot of stuff. My favorite series that he did was 100 Bullets, the old Vertigo series with Brian Azzarello, and he's done some Batman books with Brian Azzarello. But this book is not written by Brian Azzarello. It is written by Bruce Campbell.
Oh, cool.
As in the actor, Bruce Campbell.
The guy.
Evil Dead, Army of Darkness.
Awesome.
I mean, I love Bruce Campbell. I'm a huge fan of his. I have both volumes, his 2 autobiographies that he wrote,
He's got two.
He had two. He had released one. Well, let's see. I was in high school, so probably like 20 years ago.
Wow.
He released one back then, and then it's been like 20 more years, and he released another one a few years back. I got them both signed by him.
He
was having a signing at a local bookstore, and I took my old one and bought the new copy, and he signed both of them.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
did he just not finish the story, or
I think it was just the rest of his life. Like he had lived more of his life, at least 20 more years.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, so he developed more content.
Yeah. I mean, he's had a career, an interesting career.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just it's good stuff. But anyway, Bruce Campbell is a good writer. Also, you wouldn't think that just from
kind of funny.
Because he's funny,
and
in the Evil Dead movies, he's like as Ash, he's like an idiot.
Yeah.
He's a comedic character, and he's like beating himself up and just being a moron. But this is a really good book, the Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead. I can't really flip through it because this is a nice hardcover that's shrink wrapped. But highly recommend this. It's just like classic war zombie, like horror, like a horror book set in World War II.
Horror zombie war.
Horror. But and the main character is Sergeant Rock, who is a classic war character made famous by Joe Kubert. Just like one of the coolest old like standard characters. I don't know. He's a good character, and just like this is like just such a macho comic book about army tough guys fighting Nazi German zombies. Yeah. Like it's pretty much exactly what you expect it to be, and it's still really great. So.
I mean, that's a great explanation,
right?
It doesn't try to be anything.
It doesn't try to be anything other than what it is,
but it's good
and it's awesome.
It's good at doing that one thing.
It's really good at that.
Excellent. That's a great explanation.
Just our macho army men just blown away Nazi zombies.
I mean,
it's great.
Sign me up.
So another one you've seen me. You've heard me talk about this book a lot. I'm a big fan of Local Man.
Susie B. Doodles, Patreon content. Can you discuss the ethical implications of Doctor Strange making Bruce Campbell punch himself for a week in Multiverse of Madness?
Oh my God! Don't make me go there.
Let's
because
talk about it. What do we got?
Well, so that was the only scene in that movie that I enjoyed, and I completely agree. It's also an example of what I dislike about a lot of the Marvel movies is that it's a very unheroic thing for Doctor Strange to do. And I don't believe it's something that he, as a character, would do. And it really bothers me because it's just played as a joke. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, it's a funny thing to do because all of our characters have to be sarcastic and cavalier about everything that they do.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's so out of character for Doctor Strange.
They're all snarky.
Right, exactly. They're all snarky. But that being said, it was like the only thing I really enjoyed watching because I love watching Bruce Campbell abuse himself on screen.
There you go.
And he even had the after credits stinger where he like stares at the camera and I don't want to spoil it.
I haven't seen
it. Oh, you haven't even seen it?
No. Okay. Multiverse. Yeah, I've kind of lost track of the Marvel movies if I'm being 100% honest with you. Like I have no idea what's going on in the current Marvel universe.
Yeah, that was the one I came back for. I lost track of the Marvel Universe long before the average person did. But I came back for that one because of Sam Raimi. I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi.
Right,
and I thought
Army of Dead and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I like Sam Raimi and I like Doctor Strange as a character, and I thought he could do something really interesting with that.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting movie because you can tell, like, this was a scene directed by Sam Raimi. This was a scene directed by their army of computer animators that are just designing this scene. Yeah. This is a scene that's directed by Sam Raimi. This was a scene that was directed before he was signed onto the movie. Like, you can just pick it apart obviously.
Yeah. Like tonal shifts all over the place.
Yeah. So I can't really recommend the movie, but like if you like Sam Raimi, you're sort of obligated to watch it. There's a lot of I was surprised at how much of Sam Raimi was in the movie. This whole episode is just going to turn into a movie review of like a movie from a year ago.
We watched RoboCop the other day.
It's true, yeah. RoboCop is a perfect movie. We can just talk about RoboCop all day.
A perfect film that transcends age.
Mm-hmm. Well, except for
gender.
Except for our friend Celeste, who gave it a 4 out of 10.
She gave it a 4 out of 10.
No.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, Doctor Strange.
He would have done it.
He wouldn't have made somebody punch himself in the groin or in the face or whatever. It was just wrong.
It didn't feel right.
That's why he's not the Sorcerer Supreme anymore. I guess. I don't know. I haven't really kept up with
I don't know what's happening.
All right.
I don't even know what's happening anymore.
Let's
Local
go back,
man.
Let's go back to what people are here for. They're not here for my hot takes about.
I mean, they might actually be here for hot takes
for boring Marvel movies, but you've heard me talk about this book. This is such an awesome book. If you're an old guy like me,
yeah.
But I think newer readers can get into it too, because even though it takes place ostensibly in the 90s Image continuity universe, there's not a lot of baggage to it because all the characters are completely made up for the story.
Yeah.
It's a fun tonal shift between a modern day. I guess it's a little bit of a mystery. It's like a murder mystery with the flashback set in classic extreme superhero setting with like stupid costumes and everybody's gritting their teeth and it's a really, really good book. I love it. I want there to be more. So if you miss it actually was selling pretty well. I think at our store we pretty much sold out of it, and it's not available at the distributor. Early issues are. So this is your time to jump on with the nice trade paperback, and then get the new issues as they continue to come out.
Sweet. Oh hey.
All right. You know what? I can't. You know it.
What is that? Hey.
I can't let the week go by if we don't talk about a facsimile edition.
Facsimile edition.
So DC's been hitting the Batman facsimiles really hard. This is like the third one in a row. This is Detective Comics 140, which has the first appearance of this guy. Do you know this character's name? Without reading the cover.
The question mark man.
The question mark man.
The Riddler.
That's right. The Riddler. Made famous.
Jim Carrey did a good. Yeah, Jim Carrey did a good Riddler.
Looks just like him.
I mean, yeah, actually kind of does. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I have I get hot takes. Like Jim Carrey is not my favorite comedic actor, but as a kid, I was the right age.
Dude.
So I watched a lot of Jim Carrey movies back in the 90s.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And not all of them hold up. Some of them are kind of embarrassing. But all of that is to say, I actually do think he was perfectly cast.
He was great as the Riddler. I don't think the movie was very good, but
no, the movie's terrible.
Who was the Batman in that one?
That was Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer, not a very good. I'm sorry, Val, not a very good Batman.
That was the weakest one, I think, of all the even weaker than George Clooney, if you can believe it.
Yeah,
because I think everybody gives George Clooney a hard time, but I think George Clooney knew what kind of movie he was in, and he was just trying too hard. He was going full Adam West with it, which I respect. Whereas Val Kilmer's movie was like the transition movie.
He's trying to be too serious.
Val Kilmer thought he was in a Tim Burton Batman movie. He didn't realize he was in a Joel Schumacher Batman movie. And so there's like that clash of what he was trying to do with it versus what the movie was.
It's he didn't really have very many lines of dialogue or anything.
No, I don't remember him in the movie at all.
He didn't say hardly anything.
Yeah, no, it was the Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones show.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is all right. I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna admit something here publicly.
Okay.
That I had never seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey for years. The first time I ever watched it was last year when my daughter was visiting me, and she was like, "You've never seen this?" Like, it was a role reversal where she's like, "You've never seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey?" I was like, "No," like it just kind of passed me by, and I was like, I'll watch it. And then it was really funny. Like, I was dying laughing the whole time, and it's just Jim Carrey being insane. And yeah, I apologize.
So you know what the extra funny thing about that is? That literal same thing happened to me. I didn't watch it until last year. It wasn't my daughter; it was my wife. She was like, "I can't believe you've never seen it." I'm like,
it's a Christmas holiday movie.
It was by that time. I think I was kind of like, I'm too old for Jim Carrey, you know. And it's a kids movie, and I was like, whatever, I'll get around to it. And I just never did, and so we watched it, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's actually really amazing. Jim Carrey's great as the Grinch.
So that's our third movie reference.
We'll
turn this into each book. We'll just like talk about a different movie.
Absolutely. You know what this reminds me of?
This reminds me of that movie.
I mean, maybe Grinch Stole Christmas is another backyard movie.
But anyway, I don't have much else to say about it. I love 140.
140, that's what I said.
I love the facsimiles. I love looking at old comics. It has, since it's Detective Comics, it's not just Batman. It has other characters in it, like Slam Bradley, who's a detective.
Slam Bradley.
Yeah, and Robot Man. Look at this guy.
Ooh, I like Robot Man.
Yeah, he's got weird...
check something out here.
Yeah, check it out.
Oh, Got the
That
good
paper.
Got the good paper.
They got the good paper. That's
pulpy, rough.
That's what I'm.
Dark.
That's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
I love the DC facsimiles.
It's a detail, you know.
Okay, let's move on.
Hey, the plot holes.
Now we're talking about books, new
Yeah.
books that are coming out, and
Yeah.
that I actually did get to read.
Everyone's been very excited about this plot hole
I
situation.
I'm enjoying this plot holes book quite a bit. I talked about issue 1 when it came out, and how it's possibly the most self-indulgent, premise ever. Like it's a comic about a comic book creator that gets sucked into a fictional world where they have to fix plot holes in other fictional books. Like it's a little on the nose.
It's meta.
It's very meta, and it's meta and multiverses. And this is coming out at a time where I've been very vocally sick of multiverse stuff. And even meta humor
hard to
too.
Keep track of, man. I can't.
It's not like special anymore, and it's not that smart. Everybody does it, and everybody gets it now. Like everybody gets the meta reference. It's not 1988 anymore. Watchmen is not new. It's like a 30-year-old graphic novel. I think we can get over like having everything be a meta reference. That's my hot take about related to plot holes.
Hot takes. What is this a number 1?
So this is a little confusing. This is issue number 2, but this cover is an homage to The Punisher number 1 that came out in the late 80s. I want to say 87.
Okay.
So the homage goes so far as to actually have it be number 1.
Yeah, that's very confusing.
Instead of just putting the number 2 on there, like most homage covers do. Which makes me wonder if this was actually supposed to be a variant for issue 1, and they just had so many variants, or maybe it didn't even get done in time. Who knows? This cover is by Klaus Janson, who is an artist who's been around for a long time.
Yeah,
He's
Klaus.
a great artist.
Yeah,
old Klaus.
Old Klaus.
But this story just kind of continues with exactly what you expect it to be. If you enjoyed the setup for the first issue, I thought this was a good second issue. The plot moves along pretty good. It looks great. Like if you're a fan of Sean Murphy's art, I really like his art. You get a lot of the backstory for the other characters. Like the first issue was all kind of set up, and then this issue gives you a little bit more detail about all the characters, so you kind of get to know them a little bit better. And then there's a little bit of like a plot twist in plot holes, if you will, on the final page, which it just leads nicely into the third issue. Like I'm following it, I'm into it, I'm looking forward to it. So, and it's only a 5-issue series, so I can already kind of see where it's going. But it's going to be fun 5 issues, I suspect. And it is also fun because like they did 1 million variants for all of these issues, so you can kind of collect. Yeah. They're all done in different styles too. I had to go with this one because the Punisher, and
Punisher's cool.
I did read comics in the 90s when Punisher was possibly at his peak.
Yeah.
So that one's very cool.
It spoke to you.
It has.
It spoke to you on a very
deep
deep
to me on a very
level.
young level.
A nostalgia level.
Yeah. So another number 2 book that is also just continuing to hit it out of the park. Birds of Prey, which I talked about this. Has it really been a month since we last talked about this?
I guess so, yeah.
So
That's fast.
Man, time flies when you read comic books all day.
That's right. I guess it does.
But so this is issue 2 of Birds of Prey. I am really liking it. Kelly Thompson is a good writer, so you can kind of expect that. But what's really selling me on it is the art by Leonardo Romero. And I talked about it a lot when we talked about the first issue. His style has a very vintage look to it, not just in his figures, but the coloring that's going on here too gives it a real, like, I don't know how else to say it other than it looks like a comic book, which I really, really like, you know. It's like a little bit of a pop art style. I'm just into this a lot. They haven't gone on their mission yet. This is still kind of like the first issue was putting the team together. This issue is getting everybody kind of debriefed and getting all their ducks in a row so they can go on their mission. So I kind of like that the plot moves along at a good pace, but it like each issue feels substantive. Like there's enough going on, but it's not just like just throwing you right into the heist and then having the whole series just be the heist stretched out over 5 issues. Like there's like some very purposeful.
They're building it up.
They're building it up. Yes. So there's like a really methodical plotting going on, and that works too because there's so many characters. Like there's it's a 6 character team, I think. So kind of they all have like in doing it in kind of this like deliberate pacing, each character kind of gets their
It's a
like own little
time to
moment.
shine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's like what I said the first time is I cannot stand Harley Quinn. Like she's a character that I just like would be fine
Yeah.
if I didn't have to read. But I don't hate her in this. She's in it just enough. Like if it was like a lesser writer would make her more of the focus.
Yeah, lean on
just
the Harley
because
Quinn.
it's easy to write your character that makes meta jokes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that feels very much relegated to the background. Like the character is
interesting.
But I don't want to say like total background.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
equal,
She's not the focus.
She's not the focus.
Mhm.
Every character gets like equal footing. So I really appreciate that. It's like such a like solid structure.
It's
Like
refreshing.
it is. It's I hate to sound like a jerk, but it is just refreshing to read a story that's just really well done by a couple of creators. You
Yeah.
would think that comic books published by billion-dollar companies, everything would just be great
It'd
all
be
the
great,
time.
yeah,
But
like-
it's really not. As I say,
all hits, no misses.
exactly. You
all
would
killer,
think,
no
all
filler.
killer, no filler. You would think that the people that are spending the money on this, they would do that.
I
But
don't know.
as I often say, making comic books is very, very, very hard. Even the people that get paid to do it aren't very good at it.
Amazing.
So that's another recommendation from me. The Birds of Prey #2. This is also
Pretty
something I will make one other comment.
You should.
I really, really do recommend this book to people that I'm not somebody who would normally read a Birds of Prey book. Like I like Batman, and I'm familiar with these characters, but I've never really been a lot of like into a lot of the DC continuity stuff.
Yeah.
But this is a really, really great comic. Just if you just like a good comic with good characters, like I feel like you don't need to have any close ties to the Bat family or the Bat universe. Which I think that's what turns away a lot of people from those kind of books because it's like
they don't have the background.
I don't have the
information.
background, and it's like I even because everything's a new #1 these days. So even if you buy #1 of a series,
there's a bunch of stuff you just don't know.
There's a bunch of stuff you don't know, and
yeah,
it's going to be referencing like a previous event, you know.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have that at all. Like it's just a really
Nice.
great. Like there's allusions to what's going on in the greater DC continuity, but it doesn't feel like and any of this is spinning out of that. It's just like this is just the world we're in, so there's a reference to it, but it doesn't have any bearing on like the characters or what they're doing in this issue. So I really, really appreciate that.
It's awesome.
So it is really good comic. I really can't recommend
Good
it enough.
recommendation.
Yeah, high
You don't
recommendation.
have to know. You don't have to do too much homework before you get into it.
Man, that is so important.
I
too.
like that.
So another book that's in my pull list that I've been reading is Shazam.
Shazam.
I always have to get the variant cover with Chris Samney because I feel like he's like the guy that should be drawing a Captain Marvel comic, which is not to disparage Dan Mora, who's drawing this issue. I like Dan Mora's art a lot. He definitely is having a lot of fun with it. This is written by Mark Waid, and he and Mora were both working on World's Finest, Batman Superman comic last year, and now they're doing Shazam, and it's just
Shazam.
It's just more of the fun wackiness that you should get from a Shazam comic. So like, do you know what the Shazam name is an acronym for? Do you know what it stands for?
It's an acronym.
It's SHAZAM.
What?
Do you know what each letter
I
represents?
have no idea. I didn't know it was an acronym.
Yeah.
Hit me with it.
So he is. I don't know if I can even remember them all off the top of my head. It's all of his powers derive from these mostly Greek gods, but there's a few non-Greek gods thrown in there just to make it work.
Yeah, just to make.
He has the wisdom of Solomon,
Uh-huh.
the strength of Hercules,
Oh.
the courage of Achilles, maybe. Zeus, the power of Zeus. Also, Atlas is in there. The endurance of Atlas.
Huh.
And
Mercury.
who's M? Is it the speed of Mercury? That sounds like it
Speed
should
of
be.
Mercury sounds nice.
Yeah, that would. So that's what.
Interesting.
That's where all of his powers derive
Man, now I got something to talk about at the next party I go to.
from. You can be like, the Shazam.
Oh, did you know that Shazam not only was shut down by the people that created Superman, but that's that's cool. I didn't know that.
You're just filling up with all the Shazam
I
knowledge.
had no idea.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. So the plot of this.
Well thought out.
I enjoy this story that Mark Waid is doing where the gods are around. So like that's Zeus. And they're just basically upset that Billy Batson is not being a good Shazam. So they're trying to exert their control over him subtly without him knowing it.
Mhm.
And they're also not really good at being superheroes, so they're just
Nice.
turning him into a big jerk, and
Wow.
they're basically just like screwing up his life. And it's a fun plot. Like there's still like it's like a serious story, but
Mhm.
then there's giant space apes on the moon,
I like a space ape on the moon.
fighting
Yeah.
bugs, and a bee woman who's the queen of the moon,
Yeah.
and the T-Rex lawyer.
Melee.
The T-Rex lawyer is still
T-Rex
there.
lawyer.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a good comic. I really enjoy it. If you like something that's a little more fun, something that doesn't take itself too seriously,
Mhm.
and still like each issue feels like it's a complete like chunk of a story. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like he's just treading water to get to the last page punchline or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's good stuff.
It's good.
All right,
You heard it here first.
now talking about good. Now we're moving into different territory.
Yeah.
We're moving into the books that are highly anticipated. So Dan, I know you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Transformers. I mean, you were a kid of the '80s,
They're
right?
cool. Yeah.
More of a GI Joe guy.
More. I'll tell you the reason why as more of a GI Joe guy, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, is because I'm painfully middle class when I was growing up, and Transformers were very expensive.
Yes.
He-Man was expensive. But GI Joe, you could get one dude for like $3.
It was like $3, like
Yeah.
$1980. You know,
which is like a lot of money.
In comparison, the Transformers were like 10 to 20.
Yeah,
1980s
they were
dollars. They were
easily,
really
like,
expensive.
10 to 20, and my parents were like, absolutely not.
Right.
But like, oh, GI Joe, here, just
Yeah.
throw it at me, like $3.
Which is also the reason I never had a whole lot of the GI Joe vehicles.
right, because that was
Because those were expensive.
Part. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're just like, that would be like the special occasion, like the big Christmas gift would be a vehicle.
One Christmas, and I'll tell you this, I got the Cobra Mamba, which was the 3-headed helicopter.
Yeah, the helicopter.
And I asked for it for years. I think I was like, I don't know, 20, 22. Anyway, so I asked for it for years and years. And I was like 12. And finally got it, and it was pretty cool, except the blades didn't like lock into the little post that spun them very well. So you're spinning this little ball on the bottom to make them spin, and it wouldn't always catch the blade. So sometimes it just wouldn't spin the blade. It was kind of a bummer, man, like, because it had the two blades that were like canted, and they would go, but sometimes it just wouldn't catch they had like these little like notches that the blade would supposedly sit in, and it wouldn't always spin it. So yeah, what a bummer, but there you go.
So we'll save more GI Joe stories for when GI Joe releases. But right now we're talking about Transformers.
I had one Transformer.
You had one?
I had a Transformers themed birthday party when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. And I got one Transformer, and it was Sideswipe. I remember specifically because I broke him immediately. The day that I got him on my birthday, he was going on a ramp. He was going off a ramp, and he went, and then his arm came off, and I was like devastated. My mom was upset. She's like, "These things shouldn't break that easy."
Yeah,
but
that was always the kind of the
ramp.
frustrating thing about Transformers was that they were a mix. Like the toys were like part of like the main core of it would be metal, but then all the transforming bits would be plastic, and they would just like snap off like easily.
It was really fragile.
So because I did have a few Transformers, not because my parents bought them, but because I inherited them from a cousin who didn't want them anymore. And so half of them were kind of like already busted up, But there was one that was in pristine condition, and he was my favorite Transformer, and that was Grimlock, the Dinobot.
Yeah.
He was just like perfect, because like it was the one that my cousin never played with, because he liked the jets and the cars, and he just had the dinosaur. I love dinosaurs, so I was like, this is the greatest toy ever. And that toy got wrecked harder than any other toy I've ever had. Like I had like all the pieces were broken off of him, but like I could still put him back together because of the way the like body would clamp, and then you'd lock the head on. So it looked okay, but then if he transformed, he just fell apart. So he could only stay in like the dinosaur mode, So.
I mean, the ending, the sad ending to my story is that we went back to the store. They let us return it, but they didn't have another Sideswipe. So I ended up getting this weird bug bot dude.
Oh, the
And
Insecticon.
the Insecticon, and he wasn't nearly as cool as Sideswipe because he was a beetle or something like
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
he just wasn't as cool.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, cool, that's whatever. But I had him forever. I had that model forever and ever and ever. And I mean, I probably go to my parents' house and he's still there probably. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about this comic because this comic has been highly anticipated. This is written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson.
Oh yeah,
he is great. He did the book.
Oh man.
He's done a lot of great comics. He did Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, Murder Falcon at Image. Last year he did Do a Power Bomb, which was
I've seen that.
Very popular wrestling comic. I highly recommend it to everybody. And so Daniel Warren Johnson, he's a guy kind of probably around our age.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the guy. He is like the guy that I want to see doing a Transformers comic. He grew up reading the comics, playing with the toys, watching the cartoon, but he's also a really, really, really great comic book creator. You can tell that the original stuff was just a huge influence on his style. So like right off the bat, I just want to say I loved this issue. And I went into it not really expecting to follow this series because as we've established, even though I did play with some Transformers toys, I was really more of a G.I. Joe kid. That's where I was really interested in stuff. I was interested in the story of G.I. Joe more than Transformers because the Transformers story never really made sense to me. Even as a little kid. I was like, they're robots, but they're like hiding on Earth. Yeah. And so they're pretending to be cars. Well, how come all the Decepticons get to be tanks and jets with like guns and the Autobots are like little VW bugs?
Yeah,
and,
that's not very fitting.
That didn't make sense. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. This issue is fantastic. It's possibly the most perfect first issue of a series.
What?
I'm telling you, it's really, really good. It's full of action. It just launches right into it.
Sets it up.
I appreciate that he doesn't waste any time. This is what you expect from a Transformers comic. It feels like a guy playing with his toys. Nice. Like it's just exactly. A lot of action, right out of the gate. Like it's like the Transformers show up. Like I think it's about 8 pages. Like I mean, we can count. There's like this little opening page scene where you're not really sure what all the references are to, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bam, Optimus. All the dead Optimus Prime, all the dead Transformers. It's just a really great setup to why it's kind of like a restart of the original animated series and maybe some of the comics, because the comics they kind of all exist. Each comic series exists in its own little continuity world because there's pretty much one story you tell with the Transformers, which is that they're hiding on Earth and they're at a forever war with the Autobots, with the Decepticons. Yeah. And that's just all set up in this issue. But the difference between this comic and all the other times they've done that is that it's drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson and the colors are by Mike Spicer, and it's just the best it's ever looked.
Amazing.
And also, just in reference to, we've talked about Void Rivals. Yeah. And so it's
a great comic.
I've been a little soft on it, if you recall.
Well,
I mean, it's okay, but it's moving kind of slowly. This Transformers comic is the complete opposite. It is just like right out of the gate, hitting you with all the A material and exactly what you want. And if you're paying attention, because remember, it's a shared universe between Transformers and Void Rivals, and apparently G.I. Joe somehow, and I'm not sure how that's going to be, but whatever. Okay. If you're paying attention to the first issue of Void Rivals, that's where you see a Transformer in the first issue. And that was like the big reveal.
That was a big, like, mind-blowing situation.
So there's a reference to that in this issue. But if you didn't read Void Rivals, you wouldn't have any idea, because it was kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, they didn't really do anything with it.
Exactly. They didn't really do anything with it. But it was there. And so it's like, I read this, there's like a line of dialogue, because it's Jetfire. And there's a line of dialogue of him like, you were traveling the galaxy looking for, and I'm like, oh, they're referencing that like 3-page scene in Void Rivals, which
makes it all worth it.
I mean, I guess it's neat that it's there, but
not.
I wouldn't recommend. So like the difference is,
it doesn't really do anything.
It's kind of like 2 sides to it. On the one hand, if somebody were asking, do I need to read Void Rivals to understand this Transformers comic? Right now, the answer is absolutely not. Like you just don't. But in like an old school Marvel way, it is kind of fun to see other characters just show up in the background of books.
Yeah.
And just have them be there as a reminder that they all take place in the same universe,
Right.
as opposed to it being a crossover where you have to follow every single book to understand what's going on. Because that's my big criticism. That's my big complaint about Marvel Comics now is like everything's a crossover, and it used to be in a shared universe. It just meant all the characters were there, but you didn't have to read, Daredevil to enjoy Spider-Man. It was just neat that they both lived in New York City, and occasionally they would run into each other.
Yeah.
But now it's like the game has kind of changed, where everything has to connect to each series.
Everybody wants it to connect.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is I will commend Robert Kirkman for maybe his restraint in, I think I've been a little critical sometimes where it feels like he's just kind of trying to piggyback off the success of G.I. Joe and Transformers with his own new series. Just like the off-brand version of G.I. Joe and Transformers. But I commend his restraint in just kind of keeping his book like his thing. It's the story he wants to tell.
It's parallel, but it's not intersecting.
Yeah,
too much.
Not too much. We'll see where it goes in the future. But for now, I mean, because I can easily see a worse version of this where it's like, Transformers 1 opens with I can see a bad version of it where this comic opens with after the events of Void Rivals, go pick it up right now so that you understand Transformers.
So
that would be terrible. But that's not the case in this. Like it really is just like if you love Transformers, you're going to love this book because it's just all the classic characters drawn the way the original toys looked, and it's just great action.
Awesome.
The characters feel like the true versions of their characters, for lack of a better word. And I don't even think I'm the best expert on that because like I said, I watched the cartoon, that's about it. But they feel correct to me. So I really liked it. Like I said, I wasn't planning on getting it. I was planning on getting G.I. Joe, not Transformers.
Yeah.
But I might have to keep up with this
you're stuck.
Just for Daniel Warren Johnson's art, if for no other reason. And then it also turns out that it's a really good comic. But I shouldn't be surprised by that because he's a great comic book creator. I'm a big fan of his. Mm-hmm. So yeah, dang, Transformers. If you're,
go get it.
It's just nice to have. I think
it hits you in the nostalgia too.
Well, there is a bit of that, but I want to say on a greater level, I really appreciate that this book has the exact correct tone that an all ages but still slightly edgy comic should have. Okay. This feels like the comics that I read as a kid that were kids' comics. And I feel like a lot of comics that are made these days they're like all ages, like just by definition that there's not any bad language or nudity in them.
Sure.
But they're not really made for kids. Like they're still made for boring adults who are taking their medium of superheroes and comic books too seriously.
Right.
And so this is something that the Transformers book takes itself exactly seriously enough. It's something that a kid would really enjoy. I think kids that just like robots will love this comic. And there's one, I don't want to say it's not a kid's comic per se.
It gets a little spicy.
It gets a little spicy, but just enough. Yeah. Like I said, the way comics used to be.
When I was a young man reading comics.
Exactly. When I was a kid and I knew how to make good comics, unlike these days. I'll spare you my diatribe. Any more of it.
We got to do it. We got to wait for next stream. We'll have more hot takes.
We'll find some other movies to complain about.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Transformers.
Good.
Possibly my pick of the week. It's hard to say because the other book that came out.
Oh.
This is the one that I've been waiting for this book for literal years.
Uh-huh. This
is Monica by the great Dan Clowes. There you go. You can see his name. Dan Clowes. I love Dan Clowes. This book is put out by Fantagraphics. Mm-hmm. He's you can't really call him indie. He's an alt comics guy.
Okay.
So alternative comics. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't do superhero stuff. He does weird stuff.
Cool.
He had a series.
That's why you like it.
That's why I love it. He's done a lot of really good successful books. He did the book Ghost World, which was turned into an excellent movie starring very young Scarlett Johansson. He did a book called Patience, which is really good. He had a series, like a one-man anthology series in the 90s called 8 Ball, which was just like weird, surreal stories. And then he would also serialize his more like ongoing books. Like Ghost World was originally serialized in Maple, and then it was collected into a nice collected edition. Well, now he's moved on from that, and he's just releasing these like hardcover graphic novels every couple of years. So I haven't had a chance to read the whole book. I talked about it, or I didn't talk about it. I read the first like 20 pages or so.
Yeah, that's a hefty
I
book.
have to be a little careful about which pages I show.
A little racy, little spicy in there.
It is a little spicy. So this is the kind of book, when I say like it's a comic for adults, it is absolutely a comic for adults, and I mean actual for adults, like people that can handle like some complex themes, and he doesn't have to shy away from any of the images. Like even like a modern Marvel or DC comic, when they're like for adults, they still will like bleep out the curse words or not show certain things. Whereas like this is a book that is not afraid to show anything, and like the dialogue, the text is the text. Like there's none of that like asterisks in place of curse words or anything like that. And I'm absolutely mesmerized by this book. Like I said, I read the first like 20-25 pages. It is, the main character is Monica, and it's just the story of her life, I think. I haven't, admittedly, I stayed away from as many spoilers as possible. I wanted to go into this book blind. I've read things suggesting that it's genre crossing, so it kind of goes into different places you might not expect. But it starts out, it's just Monica, this character, narrating her life, starting with her parents and like her mom, as her mom is a young kid in the 60s. So it's like it goes way back. It goes way back. So at first it sounds like it's a third person story of Penny, this character Penny, and like her life as a kid, and then she leaves home and becomes like a burnt out hippie. And then you realize that the narrator is actually a character in the story. It's her daughter, Monica. And so it's this long form, just like look at her life, at least from the first 25 pages of what I've seen.
From what you've gathered so far.
This is absolutely my pick of the week, just because I've been looking forward to this for so long. And this is probably going to be the first book that we do on this show where I'm going to show it off now because it's brand new, releasing today. And then I'm going to bring it back next week after I've read the whole thing and talk about it some more.
Okay, cool.
So I absolutely love this book.
Get the full
so
experience.
Far. Yes, exactly. Because I could talk about Dan Clowes for a long time. He's one of the greatest comic book creators, still working today. Yeah, and
high praise.
And he's not he's a guy that does his own thing. Like he's not like he's not working for another publisher. Like he's really is just a comic book creator, making his stuff, making his books
his way.
And it's exactly his way, and that is not an easy thing to do, as we've made allusions to in this very episode already.
Yeah.
So we got one more book to talk about.
One more book. What do we got?
I always ask a coworker to pick out a book, and this week I didn't ask anybody, but Jacob said he wanted to read this, so I figured I would read it.
Yeah.
This is probably worth reading because it's kind of like a bigger thing that Marvel is pushing right now. This book is called Gods. But as you can see, there's these little periods.
G-O-D-S.
So that stands for something.
Shazam.
But it doesn't stand for Shazam. But so this is by Jonathan Hickman and Valerie Schitty.
Oh, we like Schitty. Jonathan Hickman.
So I was a little hesitant to read this because we just talked about Jonathan Hickman last week with Ultimate Invasion and how lackluster it was.
You're a big Ultimate Invasion fan.
I could talk about it for a long time, so I guess it did have an effect on me.
It had an emotional effect on you.
Yeah, but I thought this was pretty solid. This issue, this Gods issue. It's not necessarily something I'm totally into. It's basically a look at Marvel's supernatural, like part of their universe.
The setting.
So the setting, exactly.
Yeah.
So Doctor Strange is in it, but he's not the main character. Like you can see him right there.
He's just hanging out in the background. Chilling.
The main character are new characters, which actually gave me a little bit of hope because this felt, as opposed to Ultimate Invasion, which I was not super kind toward. This feels like a story that Jonathan Hickman actually wants to tell. Like this is about characters that he has an idea and he wants to put it out there. And unlike Ultimate Invasion, although this is a $10 issue, this book, it's a hefty size.
It's got some girth.
I didn't actually check the page count, but it's more than a single issue. It is $10, which is a bit much for me. I want comics to be cheap and disposable, but they're not.
Yeah.
That being said, this was a complete story, unlike Ultimate Invasion, which was 4 issues that ended on a to be continued. This is you could just, if you didn't read any more issues of this series, you could just read this and enjoy it.
You have a good story.
Yeah, exactly. So I really, really appreciate that, which is not something that you see in many Marvel comic books these days. So
That's true.
I will give Hickman as much credit as I can. I think this was it's well plotted. I don't know what the bigger picture is or where it's going, but this was a really good introduction to what he wants to do, because you could just, like I said, you could just read it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a little long. There's a lot of talking heads in it, which is a Hickman thing. If you like his dialogue and characterization, I get that. That's the appeal. I don't really. So there was some pages of talking heads, like the 9-panel grids with talking heads, all this thing. And I'm just like, oh man, that's that's just a lot of dialogue on a page.
That's a lot to squeeze in.
Right, exactly. But like I said, at least it was a complete story, and you could read it, and it moves along at a good pace despite all the talking heads. There's some movement to the plot. It's not just characters sitting in a room talking,
just chatting
which
with
is
each other.
Which is what Ultimate Invasion felt like. It felt like characters sitting there talking to each other, and then a 2-page splash for the action, and then more characters talking.
Yes.
This had a little bit more movement in the art. The characters are being active and doing things and making things happen. So if you like Doctor Strange, he plays a part in it, but if you
he's not the main
he's
guy.
not the main character, but we'll see if anybody else kind of develops as the series goes along. But if you like Marvel's magic stuff, if you like Doctor Strange, I would say check this out.
Right up your alley.
Yeah, it's probably exactly the type of thing you like. And it's
the wizard stuff.
Well, Jonathan Hickman is definitely a big idea kind of guy. My biggest complaint about him often is that his books feel like it's all world building, but no characters. There's no interesting character.
Yeah, the concepts are high concept.
It's all high concept.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it feels like he set up some solid characters. There's 2 characters. They have a weird relationship, and they're kind of like adversarial, but also, like I said, I don't want to give away what it is.
I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it. But it felt like, he's actually putting some characters in this, as opposed to just having everybody be a prop for the big idea.
Yeah.
So it's it's as far as Hickman stuff goes. I know I've been cool on him in the past, but this is pretty okay. I'm actually genuinely kind of curious to see where it goes, even though it's not totally my thing. Transformers is more of my thing than this, but it's good, which is not something I've said about a lot of Marvel books lately. The art, I haven't talked about the art really either, but it's really good art. It still
even
has
for a Marvel book.
Even for a Marvel book, well, it still has that that coloring that Marvel books have, and there's a lot of the poses where it's heavily photo reference poses. But there's some nice weirdness in it. Here's some fish people and a fox person, and there's some of the action pages. There's a lot going on. It doesn't feel empty. My criticism of a lot of Marvel books is the art it just feels empty. They don't.
It's a lot of space. They don't use.
Yeah. This is a full book. So I good job.
We did it. Is that all the books?
That's all the books. That's the last one.
We did it. We killed it.
Yeah.
We killed another one. A lot of books to read. Some big books.
Some big books.
You got some time on your hands. Go grab them. So if you don't buy your comic books here at Fantasy Books and Games, buy your comics somewhere. There's something out there for everyone. So go do some reading. Find some new stories to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Bye.
Let's do that.